Hello, welcome to another episode of Montana Shares, your opportunity to find out about the nonprofits that make our state so great. I'm your host, Bill Crane, and today we have Anna from Montana History Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Bill. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with this kind of the high-level view. Remind us all about what Montana History Foundation does.
So the Montana History Foundation is a 501c3 charitable foundation that raises money and then gives grants to communities for historic preservation projects across the state of Montana.
Mm-hmm. And so let's go a little deeper. What kind of jobs do you do, or what do you do for the communities?
What do we do for the communities? You know, that's a really good question because a lot of times we throw that out there, right? We give grants, but then what? And so to give you kind of an overview, our funding is solely intended to help and assist communities in their historic preservation projects. And I think you and I, we've been visiting a little bit about our Montana heritage, and I think Montanans have a deep call and a deep love for their heritage and for their history, and that's our deep love and our passion at the History Foundation is helping these communities receive the funding that they might not otherwise have. We are their vehicle to help them get the funding to preserve maybe the historic fire tower or the water tower or the train depot, whatever that might look like, or the oral histories of some of the seniors in the community. However that might look, we are there to help provide funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this is a very successful grant program. What can you do as far as tell us about an update on it?
Yes, so we just had a 2018 award, series of awards to grantees this spring, and this year we awarded over $121,000 in grants to over 35 different projects, which is kind of a record for us. Normally we stay in the 20s, but we upped it to 35 projects this year. And some of those included a historic cabin in Big Timber, some oral histories in the Teton Canyon, creating some interpretive signage around the Yellowstone Trail. And so that kind of also gives you a sense of the variety of projects that we're helping fund. And this puts us at a total of over $700,000 in grants since 2012, and which means that we've also funded 182 projects in 45 counties across Montana. So
Wow.
it's significant.
It's impressive.
It is. So that's kind of our announcement for 2018, that we've just awarded these folks in the spring and projects are rolling right now. So we're getting updates on different projects, which is fun to see. And we're getting ready for yet another season of applications, which is crazy.
Say, no sooner finish than you start all over again.
Yep,
So what should people and communities know about the starting over part? You've got grant cycle coming up.
Yep, we're coming up on a grant cycle. And our grant application period does close January 25th, so it will open this fall in October and then close in January. And one of the major questions that we get from folks who are looking at applying for a grant is, you know, frequently we'll get a phone call or someone will walk in and say, hey, I have a family farm, can I apply for a grant? And I think the number one thing that I want to communicate to folks and remind folks is that our grants are for organizations, either a nonprofit or a government-affiliated organization. That could look like a historical society, that could look like a cemetery association, a community foundation, any of those types of organizations we can give a grant to, just not an individual. So we couldn't give Bill Crane a grant, but we could give Montana Shares a grant, you know, if the situation were right. And so that's the first piece. Also, I think it's important for folks to know that we do have 5 different categories of grants. So if you're looking at applying for a grant, we do have categories that include historic cemeteries and sacred sites, historic buildings, collections and artifacts, oral histories, and education and outreach. So there's a variety of projects that all fall within those different categories. And within that, with all of that in mind, we do have our website, mthistory.org, that has all of the grant regulations and requirements outlined there. So if anyone's looking for additional resources, they're always welcome to go to our website, mthistory.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
So besides grants and that, what else do you have going on that's new?
Besides grants, well, one more thing I do want to say on grants is we do have our fall workshops coming up as well, and our grants are competitive. So we always recommend that folks participate in one of our free workshops, because at those workshops we're able to guide your application of what things to consider, and we're there to answer questions. So that's one last piece on grants, but other things. Besides myself, I'm new at the History Foundation.
Right.
I've only been there about 2 months, and otherwise, last month we hosted our very first and of its kind, it's a very unique cemetery preservation technology workshop.
Mm-hmm. It sounds interesting. Let's hear some more about it. It's
Right,
a little,
right.
Not your standard project, probably.
No, and actually for the last couple months, as I've told people that I'm doing this workshop, I always get double takes. Now, what is that workshop? So yeah, thank you for asking. So this was a workshop that we created with our grant category in mind, that Historic Cemeteries and Sacred Sites grant in mind. Our cemeteries they hold such a historic piece in Montana, and we've talked a little bit about our heritage, Montana heritage and history, and cemeteries especially have such a great potential to be a tourist attraction, to be part of heritage tourism, but unfortunately some of our cemeteries are in major disrepair, either the mountainous cemeteries or plain cemeteries. So we created this workshop to educate attendees on the different technologies available for cemetery preservation, as well as identifying unmarked grave sites. So we brought in 80 people from across the state of Montana and provided in-classroom training and a field day of demonstrations, as well as some working field trips.
And you got to try some of these toys out?
Oh,
like
we did,
ground
yeah.
penetrating radar, things that you hear and see in the movies?
Yes, so we had ground penetrating radar, we had burial sniffing dogs from California, we had photogrammetry, which is seeing almost the shadowed reverse image of a headstone. So if text has worn off, you can read it from a different perspective. So we had all sorts of different things. We had forensic archaeologists, and it felt really NCIS in a way,
I believe it.
Yeah.
And so is this something you're going to do again?
This is a one-of-a-kind workshop. We were able to fund a majority of it through a grant that we received from the National Park Service. And we received a $25,000 training and preservation grant from them. And as part of that grant from them, we are going to be preparing and creating a training video. So
in a way, you're going to do it.
In a way, we'll
keep doing it, sort of.
We'll keep doing it, not as a workshop, but people will continue. People will continue to use the resources, be able to use the resources from the workshop either on our website, utilizing speaker resources, or even that training video. And it's going to be a really beautiful production. We have a Spokane-based production company creating that for us right now, and it'll be available this fall on our website.
Okay.
So we will not be doing the workshop again, but we will have a variety of resources out there so that when communities are looking at applying for grants, they'll know which technologies to include in their grant applications, or not just grant applications, but which tools and technologies to pursue use for.
It's so odd. I don't have no tie to Boulder, to the Elkhorn area, but the Elkhorn Cemetery still sticks in my mind because there's a certain year that some disease came in and killed a lot of the children. And you're reading the tombstones, you're like, something happened here because so many children were lost that you don't see in any other of the time frames. And so they do tell stories. They are very much of our history.
They do, and they are a lot of our history. And it's interesting, a lot of people, when they travel to different states or countries, they visit cemeteries, and I don't know that that's always my number one go-to but when I travel, but I appreciate that is a huge area of interest for a lot of people who travel, and not just for people who travel, but again, back to our sense of place and our history. And in that way, cemeteries are about preserving who was and not forgetting them. And so in that way, this was a really cool workshop.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun.
It was neat, yeah.
So what's coming up next for you guys?
Next, we're totally switching gears, and we're going to be doing an antiques appraisal fair in Fort Benton in September 22nd.
Okay, I was just up there last weekend. It's a great town to have an event in.
It is a great town.
So is this thing like the Antique Roadshow or something like that?
It is. It's very similar to that, and we'll actually be borrowing 3 of the professional appraisers from the PBS show, and so we're really excited. This is a second annual event for us. It is a fundraiser event for the History Foundation as well as for the Fort Benton Museum Complex. And so folks, if they're looking to come join us, they can pay a small fee and have their hidden treasure from their basement appraised. So start digging through your closet, Bill.
And they can, I'm kind of a minimalist.
Are you?
I have one little piece of history, which is just a card that was given to my grandfather from A.M. Holter to go to the Montana Club for 10 days. That's sort of like the only little piece of memorabilia I keep.
Well, there you go.
But yeah,
We all have our things.
and Fort
Yeah.
Benton offers everything from wonderful camping in their fairgrounds area in the canoe launch to the Grand Union Hotel
Yeah.
and kind of everything else in between.
I went to the Grand Union, and Fort Benton really for the first time this May, and we had a board meeting up there, and it was absolutely beautiful. And the food at the Grand Union, I mean, come on, it's
It is very
delicious.
good.
Yeah.
We had this beautiful sunset where those, whatever the big bluff on the far side of the
yeah,
river, sun just hit it, the colors were beautiful, then you look the other way and it's just beautiful purple, and
Absolutely beautiful.
it was just sort of mesmerizing for about 5 minutes, then it all changed and went
Yeah.
dark, but it
Yeah.
is a beautiful town.
So that's what we're up to.
Good, so anything else that you want to close with or wrap up with there, Ad?
You know, while I'm thinking of it, we are working on a Carnegie Library book project, and similar to the schoolhouse book project that we did several years ago, this project, once it's published, which we're projecting will be ready to sell on the shelves early 2019, all of the sale proceeds for that book will go towards preservation for those structures that are either still Carnegie libraries or were once libraries. And so that'll be a cool fundraiser for
So what's
historic
the quick
buildings.
history of Carnegie libraries?
A quick history. Well, there's that. I don't know if that's a terribly quick history, but Montana has 15 Carnegie libraries, and of that number, I'm not quite sure off the top of my head how many are still in use as a library,
Okay.
but
So even as small
Even-
as Montana, we
even
still
as small
have
as
quite a few of
Montana,
them.
we still have a chunk. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
another fun project.
Another fun project. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so if people are interested in your grants, get on your website. It'll open
on our website.
October and close in January.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong on
Nope,
these.
that's correct. Yep. It closes January 25th.
It just finished one grant cycle, have lots of great projects
Lots
going.
of great projects. Our training video for the cemetery workshop will be on our website.
Okay.
We're suspecting about September, so keep
Okay.
an eye out for that.
I might just watch it for the fun of it. I have to. I'm a geek, so things like ground penetrating radar and
It's
stuff
cool
are
stuff.
cool stuff.
It's cool stuff. Well, and keep an eye on our website and our Facebook page. And if you want to sign up for another newsletter, we would love to have you. We keep our newsletters pretty minimal, and we're always happy to share what we're up to there as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for coming on to the show
Yeah,
today.
thank you for having me.
You bet. And thank you guys for tuning in, as always.